what we need in this workflow is to assign a mask for what it is that you want to enhance from your data. And in most cases, this is a person. So the way I do this is I give Depthkit a refinement mask. And we're going to go outside of the tool for a moment, and basically, because we shot on a green screen here, we're going to pull a key to make that mask. So we'll walk through that. And this is the tool that basically you're giving yourself a canvas for what to enhance. So I'll close that for a moment. So I'm going to go back to my project folder, into my take folder here, into the sensor, and then I'll find my video in the sensor folder here. I'm just going to quickly drag it into After Effects. And so this is, you can do this in any program, any of your favorite video editing tools. DaVinci is great, After Effects, Premiere. We'll stick with After Effects right now just to kind of keep things simple. And then again, as you are doing this later today, various Adobe accounts will also be set up on these machines to do this workflow. So I'll go through this in case anyone has never pulled a key before. I'm going to just kind of do the basics and tell you what you'd be looking for. So I'm going to make a new comp from the selection. And as you can see, it's just the standard color video. This is going to be a very messy key because we have such a tiny green screen, but you'll get the gist of it. In the back, we have a full body setup, which we can use. So for sake of example, I'm selecting my clip here, going to Effect, and actually all of this is written up in a separate document, so no worries if you don't catch any of this. I'm going to Keying, and then I'm going to select Key Light. That's my personal favorite for After Effects. It's very simple and straightforward. And here you can either work in the Key Light kind of panel here or in your clip. I'll work in my clip here. And I'm just going to take this green color and select my green, which gets rid of that pretty simply. So the next step here, when you're in view, I don't actually need to see any of this color data. I just want to look at the combined matte, because the final output is going to be a black and white, similar to, like, if you're familiar with an alpha channel, that is what we want to export. The white being what you want to include as, you know, the canvas for what you will be enhancing. So I'll quickly just apply a garbage mask to this, which helps us get rid of the excess. And for the sake of just this example, I'm going to pretend like the green screen area is what I want to work with. We would have framed this up better in another situation, but this is just a quick demo. So I'm going to chop off your feet here. I do apologize. And that is what we have to work with. So obviously that looks pretty gnarly right now. So we're going to clean this up. So we have 100% black, 100% white. So we're telling Depthkit exactly what to include. You can often do that with simply screen gain and screen balance here. These are pretty standard. Do
you want 100% black and white?
You do, yes. Yeah. Let's say I left these gray areas at the bottom. It would not have the best result, and you'd end up with, if I had 50% gray here, 50% opacity for your exported asset, which could be desirable in certain situations, but it looks a bit strange as well. So basically, you're looking for, similar to what we saw with the body index mask, where it just, you have that body mask. That is what we're creating here.
So if you, the 50% grey here would just reveal 50% of the green screen?
Yes.
And so what's the reason that you don't just use the body mask? I mean, that looked a lot more, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah. So there are two parallel workflows, and you guys may all want to use the body index today, and that's totally fine. The benefit of doing a manual mask is that it requires that input to go through the enhancement algorithm. So for the higher resolution and higher quality export, it does require this manual version. It doesn't work with the body index in that way. So you could, 2 parallel paths, you could do either one.
Is it possible to get like, is there another reason that you might do it this way? Because you can, you know, with the manual intervention, you can just make a much better mask.
Yes, that's also very true. Yeah. You're going to be working with the clean lines that I'm generating in this mask. You will see in your output in Unity. So the body index is you know, your body detection, but it is a little bit pixelated. As you saw there, it included bits of the floor, which is not ideal. There are a couple other quirks to body index, is that it doesn't really like to include feet or maybe the top of your head, and that's because you're working with the extremes of the frame. It's a quirky thing. If I were on set and I needed a complete body capture, this is often more reliable because, you know, I'm in control of that mask. Another thing to note about body index is that it will not detect a partial body as a body, which sounds silly. But if you're doing just a very tight frame of just a head, you'll struggle to detect that body initially, and it can pop on and off. And then you're stuck with a mask that is popping on and off. So it's a bit quirky to work with.
I have a question. What about if your focus is not, the subject is not a person, but let's say a room, like you find a beautiful old church that you want to bring into Unity. Is it possible with Depthkit to go and sort of like capture that and bring it as an environment?
So it definitely is. And when I think of that kind of environment capture, I think of photogrammetry, in that you want the static model to be captured in the areas where you're moving forward that are behind you. Depthkit will not do that in the way that it is capturing video, as kind of like, that's the metaphor of, if it's not in your frame, it's not in the capture any longer. And so if you wanted a model to disappear as you went along, it would do that, because the focus of this tool is more live action, human performance, things like that. So it will not maintain that model geometry unless you got creative with kind of stitching something together like that. But
typically, you would go and record a static, unchanging thing like a room using a different tool, and then import that into Unity, and then you would bring the video, and then you render the video.
yeah, exactly. Photogrammetry is a really great kind of sister workflow to Depthkit, and that's because you can't get much better in terms of quality for a photogrammetry scan when you are using a high quality DSLR, and in terms of reality capture photo scan, those tools are built for static quality environments, whereas Depthkit, again, motion, human interaction are kind of the key draws to that. So a really good sister workflow to include.
Can I have Depthkit manage well some movement when the camera is still, but is the camera is moving? There's any problem, or does
That definitely works. So I recommend watching Vestige, which is one of the experiences we had later today. It is a situation where you saw, it was in the little demo of the kind of artifact type looking glitchy characters. That was Vestige, where they actually took a Depthkit rig and followed the characters. So you get a sense of kind of a dynamic, like partial body captures and elements of the scene that are coming in and out. And it ends up being really, really beautiful, and kind of this feeling of a memory, like you're going through someone's dream. So it's really lovely. But yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. So I'll quickly just clean this up for a moment. And I might just go into the screen matte as well to clip the black and white. So that's what I'm looking for. And make sure that still looks, I've got a bit of the green screen in there.
It looks like heroic.
I'll be your man. I'll be your man.
And then between the legs, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't catch that.
His superpower, he always keys out on green screen.
I didn't tell you guys not to wear green today. I see some green out there. This is gonna be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's hilarious. That would be kind of nice.
Should have brought the
Yeah.
Oh, They'll just be floating heads.
So I'm just going to export this to the media encoder. Key points you want to remember here is, I'll do this in a moment, but match your source and then keep the same duration. So when you think about you've done an interview capture and you want to select, this is not the time to be making your select or matching that. You want to keep it the exact same duration and original source information as your color video. And I'll show you quickly what that looks like. So you can stick with H.264 as the source here. And then when it comes to bitrate, again, just match the source. I don't have to worry about audio because we don't have any audio in that clip. But if you have any doubts about, sorry, let me make this bigger for you guys. Any doubts about matching that source, there is this match source button here so that you have the same resolution and all that good stuff.
And are you using encoder because of that matched source?
It's very convenient, yeah. After Effects can introduce some export settings if you've used it previously and have like a color management settings in there. It's just not necessary. So I like Adobe Media Encoder because it just like cuts out any previous presets. So for location, and especially for you guys today, I recommend exporting your maths into your own take folder. So for this case, I'm gonna just plop it in this here. It doesn't actually matter where you put it, but just since we're gonna be sharing computers.
But you're just not overwriting the original.
Exactly, yeah, I'm still gonna be using that original. So similarly, this is a great chance if you do want to edit your color video and do a grade or despill or apply some really fun color, you can just as easily pull that color into After Effects or any other tool and apply some really fun visual effects. And then it's just linked back to the Depthkit application so that you can export with whatever color edits that you'd like to do as well. And similarly, match the source, match the duration. All right, so that now lives in my take folder. I'm gonna go back to Depthkit.
So is that something that you do as like a standard thing to sort of like clean up your PNGs and then make a sequence out of them? Like
What would-
outside in like say After Effects?
For the depth data?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually something we're going to do in the tool here. So in theory, you could do that, but I think it's easier to do in this with this enhancement algorithm. So by applying this mask, so we'll just do it right in the tool. So let's say we're looking at this. We want to clean up a bit of noise, a bit of artifacts here. We definitely have holes in your shoes, and that is probably due to just the material. So that's fairly common to see, so we want to repair that. Your shoes are wonderful. No holes in real life. So what I want to do is I have this, nothing else has changed since we were in the record workflow, except what I want to go in and do now is click Add Refinement Mask. And then for linking, I'm just pulling in that mask that we just made. Okay, so I wish we had your feet in here. I do apologize. But you can see, compared to the body index, it looks much, much better because we're using the cleaner edges that we generated on our own. And it is a much cleaner result. So once that's applied and linked, it opens up a slew of other parameters that have not been exposed to us so far. The first of that is just a crop. And this is great for taking advantage of, again, every depth pixel that we have. So we're not wasting any information. And again, I don't want to crop you out.
Can
So
you just unpack that a little? So it doesn't change the depth, the captured depth data, but you're talking about the depth data that is exported from here and imported into
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So it helps us
So
get rid of that.
If you didn't do this this refinement where you reduce the number of depth pixels,
Mm-hmm.
then what gets exported into Unity is
The full kind of
whole
frame.
including everything that you were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the export is like a video, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not three-dimensional data, so it's two-dimensional data that your plugin renders three-dimensionally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's the video, it's the double video with the master.
Exactly, yeah.
So by reducing this, you just lighten the load on Unity, having to process that every frame.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Julian, one thing is, can you go up to this point, can you talk about capture is in what format, into After Effects is in one format, into export is in what format? Because I'm not clear that the format is the same. Is it changing files and then changing files, or is it staying the same as an MP4 through everything?
So it is staying the same. I'll start with the two source streams, and that is the depth. The depth is just a PNG sequence, so it's just the raw depth data. If you've captured with a Connect, it will have that Connect body index data in there. If you capture with a RealSense, it will not. It will just be a raw depth sequence. For the color, we do have an H.264 standard color video, 1920, 1080, again, if you're working with a Connect. And then if I were to use the record workflow just using the body index mask, I don't have to touch those two things. I can open up the application and Depthkit will process those and combine those for me. So I don't have to be concerned about where they are, what they are. Depthkit will export an H.264 combined per pixel video. So yes, it is a 2D video, but in Unity it is 2.5D in the way that it is rendered in the scene. Does that clarify
Very
for
helpful.
you?
Yeah, because I didn't even know it was H.264 that was going through all this.
Sure.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
that you exported out of After Effects that didn't have any alpha channel information.
It did
Black
not.
and white pictures.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I am doing this refinement workflow, I am pulling in that original source sensor color video. That is also H.264 MOV container. And when I'm making that mask, I'm not replacing anything. I'm just doing an additional file as a mask, just matching the same codec resolution and duration. So really not touching any of the data about the video, except just getting that black and white version for a mask.
How Depthkit can manage when you the data when you have two cameras?
This is a big question.
I tried to figure out in Unity how.
So when you say 2 camera, do you mean the DSLR or 2 Connects?
Both of them.
Both of them. Okay. So this is my favorite question because I get this literally every day. And so multi-camera, that's a feature we're really, really excited about. And it's one that we have internally. If anyone here has seen Blackout, it's kind of was our proof of concept of this feature where we took 5 Connects and 5 DSLRs and captured full body performances. It is quite an intense process, and it would need, you do need 5 computers and 5 sensors and 5 cameras. And currently it is still internal because we're in the process of redesigning it for like this, more kind of user-friendly workflows and just how it works. It, again, like the legacy tools in RGBD toolkit, it's clunky, kind of hard to use, buggy. So we're in the process of redesigning that as well.
Okay.
And it's still an internal tool.
Still in R&D.
Yeah. So something that we're super excited about, but it also is quite a process in terms of what you need and resources, and you would need kind of a studio set up. For the case of Blackout, where we were shooting on a green screen, you need, a green screen all around you as well. So yeah, I can definitely talk more about that, throughout the weekend if anyone has more specific questions. For DSLR, similar situation in that it goes through a calibration process where you take a checkerboard and calibrate the DSLR to your sensor. Currently something we are also redesigning and is going to be ready a lot sooner than multicam. And yeah, it's definitely for a higher quality output is our kind of favorite workflow because the data looks really great, and you again can fit the workflow that suits your needs in terms of what camera you like to use and how you like to shoot. So it more similar to a traditional workflow.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, back to enhancement. So I have a crop here. I'm happy with this. I can see in the preview window what this looks like here. So I'm going to talk about the Refine tab here. Again, this tab is activated upon applying the refinement mask. We won't see this until we've applied that mask.
And that's in Depthkit Record, or is that in?
It's in Depthkit, so it's in both. It is a pro feature. So it's enabled in Record in order to test and play around with it, but the export function is blocked. For the sake of today, you all have Pro, so this will be readily available. Yeah. So this can be somewhat of a rabbit hole, so I'll go through these various enhancement parameters. They're a little bit finicky. They work together in that there's never going to be one quick fix for one data set. Every depth capture is different, and again, materials, lighting, which sensor you're using. If I were doing with the RealSense, it would be very different as well. So I'll kind of go over the baseline, and then if anyone is enhancing today, I'd be happy to kind of just enhance maybe one-on-one so we can really look at your data and see what's unique about it and see how we can really maximize the quality. So here, I'll start with the top, filter size. You can think of this as the level to which you are enhancing. It's kind of your pixel size. And again, I'll share a document where all of these are written down, so no pressure for remembering all of this right now. So I'm going to start with just looking at your profile. Thank you so much for letting us use your face here as a model. Let's get a profile shot here. Nope. That works. So I'll talk about what each of these can do. So level of quality, I would want to bump this up. The reason, in cases where I would not want to do that, is if I have I don't want to jump ahead and make this confusing. You always want to set these in moderation. So level of enhancement or filter size, I want to set that to max, but it can also over smooth depth data. So for those who are thinking about taking the depth sequence and taking it into After Effects for further cleanup or pre-cleanup, the most common thing you can do to depth data is just erode it, because you're over smoothing and you're over solving for these artifacts. And that's the key balance that you want to think about is, what areas do I need to enhance? What areas can I live with? It's very much a balance of what you're trying to accomplish.
The filter size is a mesh smoothing algorithm.
Essentially. So this works in collaboration with the following things. So we have the next two here, color and depth contribution. So essentially, these two are the level of influence that the color stream and the depth stream have over the final output. And what that means here is for color, you don't have to think of it as a level of influence. What it really does, it almost feels like a Gaussian blur to your depth. So when it's very noisy, and depth data can be very noisy, and it's not like film noise, it's bigger, it's chunkier. So it's harder to get rid of. It ends up just having a smoothing effect to your data. And it can be strengthened by reducing the depth contribution to 0. And what we can see already, that made it a little too smooth. I went a little too far, in which case I can either bring back that color contribution or probably, but you'll never have an entirely flat image because we cap it at a point, We don't want you to have a flat image.
That's what I was getting at, is they've basically taken an arbitrary point, or like a point at which they think it's useful to the user, but you might want to go lower than that.
Yeah, I mean, the depth data will always be there, and think of these parameters not as parameters that are controlling 100% of your data, but refining it. So we're not destroying your depth data here. We're just trying to make it better. So the last one, fill amount. This capture is not the best example because we don't have the artifacts that you likely see in these cases. But fill amount would be if you see holes in your depth, commonly seen in shiny shoes or on a watch face. You would pump that up, and this literally is filling in those holes. And just for the final one, if I needed a little bit more of I could apply the auto mask for the connect again.
What color does it grab to fill in the holes? How does it know?
The nearest color. Yeah, so it's pulling from the surrounding data.
Okay. What's that sigbox do?
This is applying the auto connect mask. You don't need to do that when you're doing your manual mask, but if you find that you have extra laser artifacts or edge artifacts, and maybe your manual mask is not as tight as you would like it to be, Body Index can further give you a chance to get rid of background data. It's totally optional.
But it merges the two.
It lets you use the double masking, essentially.
Oh, so it applies one mask over the top of the other. So it tends to remove rather than add.
Yes, yeah. It can be helpful if you have really troublesome data, but it's not necessary.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the ends, it's something like blurry. So when you're capturing somebody, is it better to have slow motion movement, or you will have some motion blur effect if you're moving too fast?
Yeah, so you will have some motion blur, just like you would have motion blur in a normal video capture. That is one of the huge benefits of calibrating a DSLR to it so that you can control elements like that. The Kinect was never designed for video capture. We're hacking it. So similar to the auto exposure that we're limited with currently, you know, motion blur is one of those things that we're not going to have a great level of control, or any control for that matter, until we calibrate on the external camera. So then I'd actually go through and export this again, and we can look at this side by side if helpful, which I might actually just do. Open up Unity again. And when we get to the point of actually setting up everyone with the software and the plugin, we'll go through a proper, you know, how to bring in the plugin into Unity, things like that.
So everything you've shown us so far is all step-by-step in online materials, so we could do it ourselves.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'll set everyone up with these resources. So I'm going to go back into my clips folder here. And again, in my exports folder, I will note that when you guys are capturing, just to put your name on your recording, so that when we have these exports, it'll automatically include your name in there as well, so we can keep track of everyone's data. So just pasting these in my assets folder, and then again I'll quickly make a clip by right-clicking, generating. And again, just dragging this data to the poster, to the metadata, and then down here to the video clip.
And then you can just copy paste, or I'm sorry, you can just copy that clip and then replace the, how would you add the, would you replace the, yeah. So you could copy that game object and then replace the video clip with the new one that you just exported.
Absolutely, sure thing. So I'll do that for a side-by-side of the previous export that we did. Oops. Didn't replace the poster image. And you can see this is why the poster image is really helpful. When we're not playing the scene, it just gives us a kind of a point here. And just to continue on your point, you also want to copy over that metadata file as well. So you have matching metadata to video file.
Right. Oh, okay, got it.
And I'm very sorry you don't have legs. But you can see the difference here.
So the poster is the one without all the scrambles in the bottom?
The refined asset is
Oh, I see. So
does
so
not
you're showing
have
the two side by side, not the poster and the
exactly,
import.
yeah.
Okay.
The poster is just what you see when the game isn't playing. It's just a still,
Oh,
it's the
okay.
still image.
So this is take one and take two, or whatever it was, it's the first one with the first refinement and the second one with the second refinement?
So the first one technically had no refinement. It was
Okay.
the standard, you process, you export. I mean, process meaning it's not raw depth, but it's the combined export. For the sake of getting started, I wanted to show you guys both options. But if you are more comfortable with the record workflow, that is totally fine. Using the body index segmentation is a really easy way just to get started and see what you have to work with and feel out the tool.